Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Okay, we are diving right into something super fascinating today. We're looking at a presentation that takes an ancient text and uses it to completely decode our very modern psychological warning signs. Specifically, we're unpacking a study called God's Warning, Lessons from the Story of Cain, and you're going to see how incredibly relevant this is to human behavior right now.
So, before we get into the ancient history side of things, I want to throw this question right at you. What actually happens when we ignore the warning signs in our lives? It sounds like a simple question, right? But the real-world stakes here are absolutely massive. The source material argues that just brushing past our internal psychological alarms can literally lead to total disaster. It's just like ignoring a fire alarm in a burning building.
And that perfectly sets up our first major theme, everyday warning signs. We constantly rely on these little interventions just to keep us safe day to day. Think about it. Your car dashboard light flashes, right? It's telling you the engine's got an issue. Or a fire alarm suddenly blares because it caught a whiff of smoke before the whole place goes up in flames. Or maybe a doctor hands you health check results showing some kind of abnormality. The core takeaway the author is hitting on here is that these warnings, they aren't punishments. No way. They are vital, life-saving interventions. They're basically acts of grace meant to stop the damage before it even happens. That alarm isn't your enemy. It's your chance to fix things.
Okay, let's look at the case of Cain. The author brings in this ancient biblical figure from Genesis chapter 4 as the ultimate foundational case study for ignored warnings.
The source zeroes in on this crucial moment right after Cain's offering is rejected, and God steps in to intervene. The text says God asks him, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast?" Now, the presenter makes a really brilliant observation here. God isn't asking these questions to gather facts. He already knows the facts, right? He's using the question as a diagnostic tool. It's a prompt to make Cain hit the brakes, look inward, and really examine the dangerous condition of his own heart.
So, how do we actually define a true intervention?
Let's break down the anatomy of a warning. The presenter walks us through 3 super powerful traits of God's warning in this text. First, a true warning shows care. God actually cares enough to step in and start a conversation before disaster strikes. Second, it doesn't rush to judge. Notice God doesn't immediately strike Cain down or call him a monster. He pauses to talk and explain. And third, it provides a clear choice. This is such a distinct framework because a true warning separates the person from the problem. It gives the individual a real, tangible chance to change course before it's too late. And here, the author draws a huge contrast between condemnation and a warning. Condemnation basically says, you have no hope. You are the problem. It slams the door shut on a person's future. But a warning says, look, there's danger ahead, but you have the power to stop it. Condemnation just breeds despair, while a warning opens the door to hope, to a response, and to genuine change. Which brings us to the climax of the whole narrative, and honestly, an incredibly powerful metaphor, the beast at the door. The text explains that God presents Cain with a stark, binary choice at this metaphorical doorway. God says, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, the presenter points out that God is explicitly laying out the natural consequences of both paths so that Cain can make his choice with absolute, crystal clear clarity.
So what exactly is waiting down that second path? Well, the ancient text says, sin is crouching at your door. The author notes something terrifying here. Sin isn't portrayed as just a passive mistake or some static rule you broke. No, it is an active, predatory threat. It's crouching, it's waiting to pounce, and its absolute ultimate desire is to completely consume its prey. And this leads to a profound psychological insight from the source, the shift from guest to master. See, initially a destructive urge, like anger or jealousy or bitterness, it's just a temporary guest knocking at your door. But if you open that door and let it in, it becomes your absolute master. It totally takes control of you. And this is exactly the test Cain failed. He refused to master his internal state, and the beast just took over.
But the analysis doesn't end on that dark note. The presentation transitions to a theological resolution, the better sacrifice. The source illustrates a major shift here, moving from the story of Cain to the figure of Jesus Christ. The presenter explains that, while a warning is a beautiful act of grace that reveals our deep internal problems, at the end of the day, it's still just a diagnostic tool. Like a dashboard light tells you the engine is busted, but you still need a mechanic to fix it, right? In this theological framework, humanity ultimately needs a savior to provide the actual, lasting solution to that sin crouching at the door. And this is highlighted through a really stark contrast drawn straight from the text. On one side, we have the grim result of Cain's failure, Abel's blood, which the text says literally cries out from the ground, demanding justice and retribution. But the author contrasts this with Jesus' blood, which declares forgiveness. The presentation frames Jesus as the perfect, better sacrifice, one that doesn't demand punishment, but instead completely reconciles humanity and offers the ultimate second chance. So, how does this all translate to us today? The source lists out our modern dashboard warning lights: anger, jealousy, broken relationships, greed, unforgiveness, spiritual coldness. I want to ask you directly, just like the author challenges us, which one of these lights is flashing red on the dashboard of your life right now? The author suggests these aren't just minor character flaws. These are the actual beasts crouching at our modern doors. Which brings us to our conclusion and a seriously provocative thought to chew on. What is God warning you about today? The presentation challenges us to realize that the alarms sounding in our lives aren't there to condemn us, they're there to save us. The big question is, will you recognize the warning, master that beast at the door, and choose the path of hope? It's an incredibly powerful perspective on some ancient wisdom. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.